So, let's talk about the Premier League. Today, we're diving into the pretty wild story of how English football went from being just a national pastime, and a troubled one at that, to becoming the biggest, richest, and most watched sports league on the entire planet. It's a tale of crisis, a massive revolution, and, well, total global domination. And it's honestly hard to wrap your head around just how big this transformation was. I mean, on one side, you have the 1980s. English football was in a really dark place. We're talking about stadiums that were literally falling apart, major problems with fan violence, and English clubs were even banned from playing in Europe. The league was in a serious decline. And then, you look at today. It's this glamorous global show, the biggest stars in the world, watched by billions of people. So the question is, how on earth did we get from that to this? Well, it all started with a revolution. One that was born out of a real crisis and powered by an absolutely mind-boggling amount of money. You see, England's top clubs were getting really frustrated. They could see this huge potential for TV money, but they felt like they were being held back by this old, outdated system. So they decided, you know what? We're going to take matters into our own hands. And this was the moment that changed absolutely everything. In 1992, the biggest clubs in England did something that was just unthinkable at the time. They broke away from a football league structure that had been around for over a century. This wasn't just a small change, it was a massive split that created a brand new league, the Premier League. It was a huge gamble, but it was one that was about to pay off in a very big way. And the reason that gamble paid off? £304 million. That was the jaw-dropping amount of the TV deal they signed with Sky Sports. And it was the rocket fuel for this new league. All that cash flowing in for the first time meant clubs could suddenly afford to buy the best players from all over the world and completely modernize their stadiums. English football wasn't just a sport anymore. It was being packaged as this premium, must-see entertainment. So with all this new money and hype, the league quickly started writing its own epic history. And really, the best way to tell that story is by looking at the great teams, the dynasties that rose up and really owned each decade, each one with its own unique flavor. You can kind of break down the league's history into these distinct eras. The 90s? That was all about one man's empire. Then in the 2000s, you had these new rivals pop up in London. The 2010s brought new money, unbelievable drama, and a fairy tale that nobody saw coming. And today, well, we're living in an era of almost complete and total supremacy. So let's start at the beginning with the league's very first dynasty. Okay, the 1990s. If you were watching back then, one thing was crystal clear. Manchester United were the kings, and Sir Alex Ferguson was their emperor. This team didn't just win games, they created this aura of being unbeatable. They pretty much defined the style, the ambition, and that famous never-say-die attitude that the new Premier League became known for all over the world. I mean, the amount of success they had was just staggering. We're talking 5 league titles in the decade. And the players, they were icons. You had the swagger of Eric Cantona, the lightning speed of Ryan Giggs, and the global superstardom of David Beckham. This whole golden era hit its peak in 1999 when they won the historic treble, the league, the FA Cup, and the Champions League all in one season. It cemented their legacy as one of the greatest teams ever. But you know, no dynasty can last forever. As we moved into the new millennium, the whole landscape of the league started to change. Suddenly, Manchester United's throne wasn't so secure. New challengers were emerging, and they were driven by brilliant managers and, for the first time, something new: the incredible wealth of billionaire owners. And the 2000s were just packed with legendary stories. First, you had Arsenal's breathtaking Invincibles, a team that went an entire season without losing a single game, a record that still stands today. Then, the Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich bought Chelsea and just turned them into an overnight powerhouse, winning back-to-back titles. And just when you thought United's time was up, they came roaring back, led by this young Portuguese superstar named Cristiano Ronaldo. The competition was just on a whole other level. All that fierce competition really set the stage for the 2010s, a decade that was defined by one thing: pure, unscripted drama. This is when brand new rivalries were forged, the league's global audience just exploded, and a story happened that, I promise you, nobody could have predicted. First came the rise of the so-called noisy neighbors. Bankrolled by new investment from Abu Dhabi, Manchester City finally emerged as a true challenger to their famous rivals Manchester United. And their first title win in 2012, it was sealed in the most dramatic way you could possibly imagine: a goal from Sergio Aguero in the literal last seconds of the last game of the season. It's a moment that's just burned into the memory of every football fan. But as crazy as that was, what happened just 4 years later was on a whole other planet. In 2016, the Premier League produced what a lot of people think is the single greatest underdog story in the history of all sports. The reaction around the world was just shock, pure disbelief. Little Leicester City, a team that had almost gotten kicked out of the league the year before, went on to win the whole thing. At the start of the season, the odds of them winning were 5,000 to 1. To put that in perspective for you, that's considered more unlikely than finding Elvis alive. It was this impossible dream come true, and it proved that even in this league of billionaires, magic could still happen. So the drama on the pitch was absolutely off the charts. But behind the scenes, something just as important was happening. The Premier League was finishing its transformation from just a sports competition into a genuine global entertainment product. It had become the world's league. And that global product is now defined by a new standard of excellence. The Leicester fairy tale has kind of given way to a new, dominant dynasty. Under their manager Pep Guardiola, Manchester City have reached just unbelievable heights, winning 3 titles in a row and topping it all off with their own historic treble in 2023. Their dominance is now the centerpiece of the league's modern brand. And the result of all that history, all that drama? A league with the global reach that is simply breathtaking. It's broadcast in over 200 countries to an audience of billions. And the money it makes? It's way more than any other football league on the planet. The key takeaway is that the huge gamble those clubs took back in 1992 didn't just succeed, it created a global monster. So when you look at the Premier League today, you realize it's so much more than just a sport. It's become a massive part of modern culture. It's a global brand, a source of intense local pride, and for millions and millions of people all over the world, it's a non-negotiable part of their weekend. So from the crumbling stadiums of the 1980s to the global powerhouse we see today, the journey has been absolutely extraordinary. The gamble paid off, the revolution worked, and now the Premier League sits right at the top of world football. But in a sport that's always changing, with new money and new challenges always on the horizon, the big question is, can this dominance last forever?